Hola, buenos días y bienvenidos a todos.
Morning and welcome you all to the first webinar that is organized by the International Residence Unit with regards to Brexit, the campaign that we have made, where we want to sort out all the doubts and problems or questions that Brexit is generating. And this is within the campaign that is called All That You Need to Know About Brexit. From the International Relations Residence Unit, we want to thank the embassy and also the participation and the willingness of the British consulate to give answer to the more than 80,000 people that are British in the province of Alicante. We have registered this number, but we know that there are more people registered, not registered, but living in Alicante because they have wished to come here and live here. So this type of campaign is essential now because of the uncertainties that they have, and to give an answer to all the needs and the questions that these people may have, because the situation that we are living today is an uncertain one. And in this area, International Residence Unit, we have it clear that we want to be close to the people that decide and wish to come here to visit Spain or to live in Spain. I want to thank the participation of Sarah Jane Morris. Specifically, we have lots of meetings and relations. The president of the provincial council has also thanked all the people for their collaboration. We want you to see the Provincial Council of Alicante as a friend or as a collaborator, to be able to cooperate with all the stakeholders or players as necessary. This webinar is the first one of 3 that we are going to follow. This has lots of expectation. We've got more than 150 participants in that webinar that is going to be uploaded on the website, so that all the people that haven't had any access at the moment will be able to reconnect later and have answers to the questions that they may have. So I encourage all the participants to make as many questions as they wish, so that we can reply them later on. So I'm going to give the floor to Sarah Jane Morris and Lorna Grady, because that's the important part of this webinar. Thank you for your participation, and the Provincial Council of Alicante is at your disposal for all the British citizens and visitors. And this is how we start this webinar. So now I give the floor to Sarah Jane Morris. Thank you very much for being here with us.
I'm going to talk in English during this webinar because I understand that there's simultaneous translation, and to avoid confusion, I'll just stick to the one language. Firstly, a huge thank you to the Diputación for organising this webinar. It's the first one we've done in this context, and I hope we will do a lot more like this, because I think that the reach is far further than just to the British nationals in the area, but hopefully a lot of the town halls as well are joining, as I understand that there's a lot more people than just the British nationals in the area that need to understand what it means now that the United Kingdom has left the European Union. So really, today I have 3 messages, which are essentially, if you haven't done this already, you need to get yourself registered. You need to get help if you don't know how to do that, and you also need to get a TIE. This is the foreigner's residence card, which has got a photo on it. So essentially, since we left the European Union and the transition period finished at the end of last year, there are still quite a few people who haven't quite got all their paperwork together. But if you were genuinely living in Spain before the end of the transition period, that is before the end of last year, then you can still get yourself registered as legally resident in Spain. And Lorna will go into more detail about how you do that. We understand that it's complex, it's complicated, but there is help out there. And if you go to our gov.uk Living in Spain pages on the internet, there's a lot of information there, ranging from residency, healthcare, all the way through to things to do with tax. But essentially, since we've left the European Union, the big difference is that in the past, we found a lot of people in Spain that we came across we said, where do you live? And they went, well, I live in Spain and I live in the UK. Well, you can't do that anymore. From now on, either you are resident in Spain or you are resident in the UK. And if Spain is your home and you still haven't got down to getting your paperwork done and you're not legally resident, then please do listen to what we're going to say today and take note and take action. So I'm now going to pass over to Lorna, who's going to go into more detail, but I will come back on a few of the questions at the end. But what we do want to do is get you to really get your skates on if you haven't done already. Okay, over to you, Lorna.
Thank you, Sarah Jane, and good morning to everybody. I'm also going to speak in English this morning, so not to confuse those of you who are listening on the different channels. So just to enter into a little bit more detail on some of the points that Sarah Jane has already mentioned. As UK nationals living in Spain, if you were living in Spain before the end of the transition period, as Sarah Jane has said, which is the end of last year, then you will have rights under the withdrawal agreement. The withdrawal agreement has a specific part which specifically goes into the rights of citizens. So the rights, I just got to go through them in general terms now. I'm sure there will be questions afterwards. But in general terms, your right to stay in the country is protected. But as Sarah Jane has said, you must make sure that you register. This has always been an obligation for UK nationals living in Spain. And if you haven't got round to it yet, it's not too late, but you will need to get your paperwork together to prove not only that you meet the requirements for residency, which is the same as for any other EU citizen, but you will also need to have documentation which shows that you were living in Spain before the end of last year. Now, this can be a variety of different things. It could be a Padrón certificate, but it is not limited to a Padrón certificate. It could be things like utility bills, your bank statements, lots of different things showing that you had life here in Spain before the end of last year. Now, it's too complicated for me to go into all the detail here, so I would just reiterate what Sarah Jane has already said, is that if you are not yet registered, then there is a lot of information on our Living in Spain guide on gov.uk. I expect the two of us will be talking a lot about that today, but it is genuinely where you will find a lot of helpful information, plus links to information from the Spanish government, which also provides step-by-step guidance on how to get yourself registered in Spain. So please do take that action if you haven't done so already. The other rights that I wanted to highlight under the withdrawal agreement are your right to work here in Spain. So if there's anybody here listening who is working and is worried about whether they will need a work permit or things like that in the future, again, under the withdrawal agreement, your right to work in Spain is protected. And UK nationals, and this is quite important, UK nationals who have rights under the withdrawal agreement have the right to be treated on an equal basis when it comes to employment as any other Spanish or EU citizen in Spain. So, for example, if a UK national wishes to change job and apply for a job in the future, if they are under the withdrawal agreement, they have the same right to apply for that job as any other EU or Spanish citizen. Now, that won't necessarily be the same for those who arrive in Spain from this year onwards, because they will have a different set of rights. But those under the withdrawal agreement have that right to work protected. The other important rights that I wanted to highlight are your right to a pension. That doesn't change. So living here in Spain, you continue to receive your UK state pension, as you always have done. And you will continue to have the right to that pension being uprated on a yearly basis. So again, I know that before the UK left the European Union, there was a lot of confusion about that, but just to reiterate that that is part of the rights that you have protected as a UK national under the withdrawal agreement. The other important right, which is perhaps related to that for many of you, is your access to healthcare. And again, it's a message of reassurance here that as a UK national living in Spain, your access to healthcare hasn't changed with the UK leaving the EU, okay? You still have the same access to healthcare as you did before. If you are a pensioner and you receive your healthcare through a form called an S1 form, it used to be called an E121 form, which might also be familiar to some of you. If you have your healthcare based on your UK state pension through an S1 form, that hasn't changed, okay? If you're already registered, you don't need to take action. If you are going to claim your pension in the future and then will have right to healthcare via an S1 form, then you will also have the right to register that form at whatever point it is that you start to claim your UK state pension. So again, it's quite a lot of information we're giving to you. This session is being recorded for you to watch back, but I would suggest that you go on to gov.uk, as Sarah Jane said at the beginning, because that is where you will see a lot of this information. Now, just as we're on healthcare, I wondered, Sarah Jane, whether you wanted to say anything about vaccinations, because I know this is a hot topic. It's not related to Brexit. It's not related to the UK's exit from the European Union, but it is a question we get quite a lot. So I don't know, Sarah Jane, if you wanted to say something about that now.
Yes, on vaccinations, Spain are vaccinating everybody in Spain on public health grounds. So regardless of whether you have private healthcare, public healthcare, or no healthcare, you will be vaccinated in Spain. Okay. So what you do need to do is go along to your local health centre and basically declare your intention to be vaccinated, so you can get on the books there if you're not already. Now, Valencia have been a fantastic Comunidad Autónoma region because they've been ahead of the curve. They were one of the first ones to say, get yourself down to the health centre and get yourself up registered for the vaccines. So fingers crossed there will be no problems. If you are having problems, do let us know. Drop us a line. Again, if you go onto gov.uk, you'll see that there is an area there where you can, there's what we call a web form. So you can drop us a line in there if you are having trouble. But the first port of call is your local health centre and say, I want to get vaccinated. And essentially, even if you even have private healthcare, you will be vaccinated. Okay, so you need to wait your turn though. So you will need to wait until your age group is called up. But if you haven't been called up and you know the people who have been, get yourself down to your health centre and find out why.
Thanks, Sarah Jane. Just before I finish and we come on to some of the questions that were submitted in advance, there were two other areas that I wanted to cover which are not actually covered by the withdrawal agreement, but I know that a lot of you have questions about them. And those are driving licenses and travel. Okay, so as I say, the withdrawal agreement and the rights that I set out briefly before, those are for you as a resident here in Spain, okay, and they are protected for as long as you live in Spain. But there are some things which were not included in the withdrawal agreement, and one of those things was the exchange of driving licenses. So some of you who have been living here for a while may be very familiar with our message that we have been giving quite regularly of the need to exchange your UK license for a Spanish license. And we gave that information because, as I said, this wasn't covered in the withdrawal agreement, and it's actually down to each member state what the rules will be going forward. Now, in the case of Spain, at the moment, UK licenses are recognised for driving here in Spain until the end of next month, so until the end of June 2021. Okay. Now, for those of you who exchanged your licence for a Spanish one, you don't need to take any more action. You've done everything you needed to do. For those of you who haven't yet exchanged your licence, then what I can say is that the UK and Spain are in discussion about a longer term agreement on the exchange of driving licenses without the need for a practical test, but those discussions are ongoing. So there's not a huge amount I can say apart from to reassure you that it is a piece of work which is going at pace and that we hope to provide more information soon. So for those of you who haven't yet started the process to exchange your license for a Spanish one, my advice would be to sign up for the email alerts on our Living in Spain guide on gov.uk. There is a section there about driving in Spain, and that is where you will find all the latest information. Okay, now I know that there are some of you who are worried about this period of recognition for UK licenses, which, as I say, at the moment ends next month. Now, again, this is something that we're in contact with the Spanish authorities about. It is up to them. It is ultimately a Spanish government competence as to what happens here, but we are in discussions with them. And again, if there is any news on that period of recognition for UK licenses here in Spain, then again, we will update our Living In guide and our social media channels as soon as we have that information. So I suppose what I can give you is a message of reassurance that we understand it's an important issue. What I can't give you today is the detail because those discussions are still ongoing. But I know that there will be some questions about driving licenses and happy to pick those up afterwards. But the other topic that I did want to touch on again was travel. So travel is another area which will have changed for UK nationals now that the UK has left the EU. So for those of you who are living in Spain, you are still able to travel to other countries in the Schengen area. So the Schengen area is a group of European member states where there is free movement, no borders generally. You are still able to travel to other countries such as France, Germany, for up to 90 days in any 180-day period without a visa. So if you are looking to go on holiday to Greece or Portugal, then you can still do so without the need for a visa, as long as you are making sure that you stick to 90 days in any 180-day period. And when you travel, please travel with your residence document, because you will find that coming back into Spain, it is a lot easier whether you are traveling within the Schengen area or outside the Schengen area, and particularly if you're going from the UK to Spain, that you will need to travel with your residence document to prove that you are resident here in Spain. It will facilitate the border crossing for you. And as Sarah Jane mentioned at the beginning, the new TIE document, the residence document, is something that the Spanish government have from the very beginning said will facilitate your travel and your crossing of borders. So please do bear that in mind if you haven't already requested the TIE. Now, we had a couple of questions from people who split their time between Spain and the UK in advance. And I just wanted to touch on that because we had a couple of questions about people who say that they are resident here, but that they wish to remain tax resident in the UK because they essentially split their time mainly in the UK, but wanted to be resident here in Spain as well. Now, as Sarah Jane says, up until now, that may have been possible for people, but you do really need to make a decision as to where it is that you are resident. We cannot give tax advice. I wish we could, but it's an extremely complicated area and we are not qualified to do so. So if you have questions about where it is that you should be paying your tax, you must speak to a tax specialist because I'm afraid we just can't advise you. What I would say to people who are looking to split their time is that you do need to be aware that your right of residence in Spain is protected, but that is as long as you can prove that you are continually resident here. And it's important to note that absences from Spain may affect your right to residence. So if you haven't been here for more than 5 years, if you're still what's called a temporary resident, if you are absent from Spain for more than 6 months in a year without an exceptional reason, then that can impact on your right to residence in Spain. So for those of you thinking, well, I'll get a residence document in Spain and then still spend 9 months in the UK, your right to keep that residence document in Spain could well be affected by that absence. So you do need to bear that in mind. Now, for those of you who have permanent residence in Spain, if you've been here for more than 5 years, then you can be out of the country for up to 5 years at a time without it impacting on your right of residence. So there is a difference there depending on how long you have been living in Spain. So it's quite complicated, but it would just say for swallows, as we affectionately call those who split their time between the UK and Spain, do bear in mind that absences can affect your right of residence. And if you choose to be resident in Spain, then that can affect where you must be paying your tax. And for that, you need to get specialist advice. And just very lastly, before I pass back to Sarah Jane, because there is one topic which has come up a lot over the last couple of days, and this is about something called a Carta de Invitación, that we know has been talked about quite a lot on social media. And this relates to people who are living in Spain, but perhaps wish to have their friends and family come over and visit them. Now that UK nationals are non-EU citizens, for UK visitors coming into Spain, they will be subject to checks at the border. So they will be asked to prove that they have an onward or return ticket, for example. They could be asked that they've got enough money to say that they can support themselves during their stay. And they may also be asked about where it is they are staying. And that is where this Carta de Invitación is used by non-EU nationals coming into Spain. Now, we are in touch with the Spanish authorities on this, and as soon as we have clear guidance, then we will be updating our travel advice page. So for those of you who perhaps are not resident but like to spend time in Spain, or you have friends and family who are coming over to Spain in the near future, please do encourage them to look at our travel advice page, which is separate to the Living In Guide. It's specifically for those travelling, and that will be updated as soon as we have more information on the Carta de Invitación. I think with that, Sarah Jane, I'll pass back to you.
Okay, thank you, Lorna. And we will get on to, I see there's some more questions that are coming in as we talk, and I know there's some questions that we're going to answer in a minute, and I think some of them that Lorna is answering as we go along, so hopefully have answered your question. But and I appreciate it's a lot of information that we try to kind of share in quite a short period of time. So please do go to our website for more information to read in slower time. And I know that the link, one of the links that keeps coming up is the travel advice. They're essentially on the gov.uk website. When you go for Spain, there are two types of advice. One is travel advice, which is about traveling to Spain. And the other one is living in, what we call the living in guide, which is about living in Spain. So essentially, I would suggest that depending on what you want to do or your family members want to do, that you visit either site. Because essentially the living in guide will give you information essentially on how to get residency, how to exchange your driving license, healthcare, etc. for people who are living in Spain. The travel advice will give you information about how to, particularly at the moment when things are quite fast moving, how to get into Spain. And just on that point, with the COVID restrictions, there are two things you need to bear in mind. One is exiting and entering the UK, and the other one is exiting and entering Spain. And it's a bit of a moving feast, and particularly at the moment, as you'll see, that the UK is opening up on exiting the UK, but Spain hasn't yet on entering the UK, but entering Spain, but it will do soon. So you do need to really look at both when you're entering and exiting, and actually particularly for people who are resident as well. So please do keep an eye on our travel advice because it is relevant to you as well. Now, on the living in page, you will also find information on how to get help. There's a number to call, but there's also the British government is funding non-government organisations, essentially what we call the UK National Support Fund. They're funding organisations, or we are funding organisations across Europe to support British nationals in getting their residency application sorted out. Essentially, in enabling them to exercise their rights under the withdrawal agreement. Now, in the case of Spain, there are 3 organisations, and in the province of Alicante, Barbelia is the organisation that is working with us to help you. Now, and as I remember, if I said earlier, the second point is if you haven't got your residency, then get help. Now, go to Barbelia, and again, all the information is on our website. Please do contact them because they're expert. This is their area of expertise, essentially, is helping people get exercise their residency rights in Spain. And the case of British nationals, obviously, they have really kind of finessed their expertise in this area, and they are really, really good at telling you what you need to do, what you need to get, and also helping you through the process if you've got a less than straightforward situation. So please, if you haven't got your residency sorted out yet, and you do fall within the rights of withdrawal agreement because you were genuinely living here before the end of last year, please contact Barbelia because they can help you with your residency application if you're struggling. And just to echo Lorna's point on the TIE, a lot of people have got green certificates, and because their residency dates back before July of last year. Now, your green residency certificate is perfectly valid, but it's not photo ID, and you will know if you live here in Spain that photo ID is very much what is more widely accepted and much easier to use and much easier to sort of get by in Spain. So what the Spanish are saying is that please move across to the TIE if you haven't done so already, because it will make your life a lot easier. It essentially will become photo ID. And now, if you've got a green residency certificate, it is a straight swap. So it's not onerous in the same way that applying for residency is for all of you who are put off by the idea of getting a TIE because you went through the residency application process and thought, all that paperwork, I don't know if I can bear it. Please do get your TIE, because I think you'll find that it is very, very handy. It's photo ID, and it's just the same as the Spanish use their DNI or their ID card, and you can flash it around. It's got your photo on it, and it will say on it that you are a beneficiary of the withdrawal agreement. So every time you are questioned about anything, should you be questioned about anything, point them to the bit that says you're a beneficiary of the withdrawal agreement, because they're, as you know from what Lorna was saying earlier, that opens a whole area of rights that you otherwise wouldn't be entitled to. Now, I think I'm passing over to you again, Lorna. Is that right for questions and answers, or was I supposed to cover something else before I passed over to you?
No, yeah, I'm happy to go through some of the questions that were submitted in advance. As as Sarah Jane said, I think some of them we have picked up in the presentation already, and we do want to make sure that we get to your live questions as well. But because some of you, you did take the time to submit these in advance, for which we are very grateful. So I just want to touch on a couple of them now. Somebody, I think it was Jeffrey, had mentioned that he wishes to exchange for the TIE. He was registered previously and had a green residence certificate, but he can no longer find that green residence certificate. He doesn't know where it is. So he has been told that in order to get his TIE, he needs to go along with the original green certificate. Now, if you're in the same position as Jeffrey and you do not have your green certificate, either because it's been lost or stolen, then the Spanish authorities have said you can move to the TIE, but you will need to go along to the National Police Station with a denuncia. So you will need to go to a police station to let them know in advance that you have either had your certificate lost or stolen, and then take that with you in order to get your TIE, because you don't have the green certificate to present as part of the process. Now, this is exactly the same as Spanish nationals who lose or have their DNI stolen. So it's the same process that Spanish nationals need to go through. Your residence should be registered on the system that the Spanish have, but you will need to take the denuncia from the National Police along with you in order to complete that TIE process. So I hope that helps Jeffrey and anybody else with it in a similar situation. We had a couple of questions from Martin and Norman about residents as somebody who splits their time between the UK and Spain, particularly around the tax implications of that. As I mentioned, we can't give tax advice, but I do hope that the information I gave earlier in the presentation has helped understand the periods of time that you can be out of Spain without losing your residence rights here as a beneficiary of the withdrawal agreement. So just to remind Norman and Martin that is quite important to consider there. Now, we also had a couple of questions about visas. Now, I think I do want to make quite clear, because I think there's been a bit of confusion around the economic support or income that you need to have in order to become resident here in Spain. And it is different depending on if you are under the withdrawal agreement or if you are a new resident moving from 2021 onwards. So just to be clear, if you are registering now, but you have been living in Spain before the end of 2020, and you are therefore under the withdrawal agreement, but you need to go through that registration process, then the income requirements that you are required to prove are exactly the same as what they were before, okay? They are the EU requirements for residents. For UK nationals who are moving to Spain now, they will require a visa, and they will need to start the process in the UK via the Spanish Consulate General. And the visa which they apply for will depend on their circumstances. So there's not one visa fits all. It depends on whether you're coming to work, whether you're planning to retire here, what your circumstances are. And the requirements for that visa will differ. Now, the Spanish government are the ones who set the requirements for the visa. So unfortunately, Sarah Jane and I can't really go into the details as to what you need to present. But if anyone has questions about visa requirements for new residents, people looking to move now, then the Spanish Consulate General in the UK is the best place to go for information. There was a question around travel and documentation. And again, we just touched on this briefly. Philip was asking about traveling to the UK. Philip has applied for residency, but he hasn't yet got his TIE card. So he's still in the process of going through the residence process, registrations rather. And he was asking what documentation will he need to have on him in order to go to the UK and come back to Spain. Now, as Sarah Jane said, at this point in time, entry to Spain is still restricted to those who are resident here or who are Spanish or EU nationals, or who have an exceptional reason to come in. So if you are resident here, it is important that if you are looking to leave and come back, that you have the evidence to prove it. Now, the Spanish government recently updated the list of documents that you can use as a beneficiary of the withdrawal agreement to prove that you are resident here. So that can be the green certificate or the TIE, or it could be what they call the resolución. So if you've had a decision from the immigration office saying, yes, your residence has been accepted and you now can apply for the actual physical card, that resolución, that piece of paper, is also acceptable. Okay, full information again is on our travel advice page, and the Spanish consulate in the UK has also published that list of information. So Philip, I would suggest you have a look there to see whether the documentation you have meets the requirements for the travel restrictions which are in place at the moment. Now, as Sarah Jane said, they are subject to change, so do keep up to date with the travel advice as well. We then had a couple of questions around driving licenses, which I also wanted to pick up on. So thank you to Martin and Graham for those. Martin was asking, I believe Martin is somebody who splits his time between the UK and Spain, says that he doesn't wish to spend more than 6 months here, but is currently registered as resident. So in this case, Martin, to be resident, as I mentioned in the presentation, you do need to spend a certain amount of time each year here. And if you are resident here, then you do need to exchange your UK license for a Spanish one. It is something that the Spanish government have said that UK nationals must do. Now, if you do exchange for a Spanish one, you have a Spanish license, you can use that when you go back to the UK. It will still be recognised for visits back to the UK. I think that was part of Martin's concern, that if he did go to visits in the UK, having a Spanish license might cause him problems. The answer is no, it will still be recognised in the UK. Now, if you are not resident in Spain, but you wish to come and visit, perhaps you own a second home here and you wish to come and visit, then you can use a UK license whilst you are on temporary visits here in Spain, and you do not need an international driving permit. Okay, I know there was a lot of talk about international permits last year and the year before, but the situation where we are now is that if you are visiting Spain, you can use your UK license whilst you are on temporary visits. And as we mentioned before, you can spend up to 90 days in any 180 days in Spain without the need for a visa. Just checking if I've covered off those questions. And then I think there were a couple of questions as well, which were around, there was Padron registration, which I'm going to leave for the Diputación perhaps to pick up, because that is a process which you go through with your Spanish town hall. We also had a question about travelling to the UK for Spanish nationals, because understandably, some of you have seen some of the media coverage recently of Spanish and other EU nationals being detained, and that has caused a lot of anxiety and worry for those of you who perhaps are looking to visit the UK with Spanish friends or family. So just to be really clear, if you are going to the UK to visit, then a Spanish national, your Spanish family members are able to go with you for up to 6 months without the need for a visa if you are going to visit. Now, it is different if in the case of a Spanish or other EU national who is looking to go to the UK to work, because just like it is different for UK nationals coming to Spain, the rules around freedom of movement and travel between the UK and Spain have changed. So if a EU national is looking to go to the UK specifically for work, they will require a visa. And if they don't have the right documentation, then that is where we have seen, unfortunately, some of these instances which have come up in the media. Now, there's a lot of information on gov.uk about the UK's visa system. Again, we can pass the link perhaps to the Diputación if they don't already have it, for those of you who are concerned. In the current circumstances, as I say, things have been complicated with COVID as well, which I think has complicated the issue of EU citizens who have gone to the UK but actually didn't have the right to enter. So we can't go into individual circumstances and comment on individual cases, but what I would say is if you are looking to travel and you are concerned, there is a lot of information on gov.uk about where you do need a visa and where you don't. As I say, if you're going for a visit, purely to visit friends and family for tourism, you do not need a visa with your Spanish family members. The last question that was submitted in advance was around what the embassy in Madrid in particular has done in terms of the rights of UK nationals living in Spain. and how we are looking at the rights and how we are making sure that they are protected. So what I would say is that you've heard a bit today about all the work that the UK has done with the EU to negotiate the withdrawal agreement. That is where your rights are protected as UK nationals living in Spain. It's an international treaty, and there are mechanisms in place to make sure that both sides, the UK and European member states, ensure that they deliver on those responsibilities for citizens. So that has been an enormous part of the work of the British government over the last few years. I would also say that you will, as I say, with lots of information on gov.uk, the thing that's really helpful for us is your questions, because we make sure that we use your questions to update the information on our living in guides and on our travel advice to make sure that we are providing the information that citizens need. So again, please don't feel, your questions are always looked at. We always take them into account, and we make sure that we then update our information accordingly. And we also use your feedback in terms of our relationships and our engagement with Spanish authorities. So if there are problems coming up, then we will engage on those as well. I think that's all I want to say, because I'm conscious we want to have time for the questions which are coming in. So Sarah Jane, I'm going to pass back to you.
So I've been skimming through the questions, and I'll pick up a few whilst you have the time to skim through a few as well. So there was one about voting and what's your voting rights. And again, there is a part on gov.uk around voting, what your voting rights are in Spain. But if you've been living in Spain for more than 3 years, you can both vote and stand in local elections. Those are the ones that are around your town hall, your local elections. You will not be able to vote in regional or national elections unless you have Spanish nationality. So as a British national, if you've been living here for more than 3 years, you can vote in local elections. You can also stand. There was also a question from somebody who has a British and a UK and an Irish passport, and asks if they need the TIE. Well, it depends on what you registered as resident in Spain on the first time round. So if you're registered as resident in Spain as a British national, then you can either go across and get the TIE, or you can actually go back and say I'm also an Irish national and change your nationality on what they call the central system, where you are all registered. So the nationality that you've got there. So you have two choices there if you have both the UK and an Irish passport. And I think there was another person who asked about absence and about leaving for family member. I think Lorna covered this off, but essentially you can leave Spain without losing your withdrawal agreement rights for certain periods of time, depending on how long, whether you've got permanent or temporary resident. You will need to kind of look into that in more detail in terms of how long you're planning on being absent, and if you want to do it for justifiable reason, you might want to consult locally what they will consider to be justifiable before you head back. But essentially, again, there is more information on our website on that. The Carta de Invitación came up a few times again, but I think Lorna has covered that one up as best we can. On our side, it's a sort of a Spanish requirement, and it's a pan-European one. And please do look at our travel advice, because that is something that, as the more information or detail we get about that, we will continue to update information there. And I'll pass over to Lorna, because I think I've covered off all the ones I've written down for now, but I'm sure Lorna's picked some more up since then.
Just trying to find the mute button, sorry. Yeah, so I was just having a very quick skim through, and I think on one of the chats that I've got here, there was somebody who said that they haven't got a green residence certificate and they were not sure how to start the registration process. So as we mentioned a bit earlier in the presentation, on our Living in Spain guide, there is a section about residence. That will take you, a link will take you to a much more detailed guide about how to get into the system if you are applying for the first time, but you were living here before the end of 2020. And as Sarah Jane also mentioned, there are organisations who are available to support you if you have not yet taken that step and you are finding it difficult for whatever reason to get into the system. So basically, if you haven't yet already registered, it is a two-part process. The first is with the Immigration Office. You need to present your documentation. Once they have given you a decision, If that decision is the resolución favorable, which basically says your residence has been authorized, then you move to the second part of the process, which is applying for the physical TIE card, and that is with generally the National Police. Now in Alicante, what I would just say is that for those of you who perhaps have done the first part of the process and are struggling to get the application for the TIE, they have recently opened up a lot more appointments in various different locations in the province. So if you are a first-time applicant, or you are somebody who has a green residence certificate and looking to get the TIE, do take advantage of those appointments. We heard your feedback that it was very difficult to get appointments. The Spanish regional authorities, local authorities have taken action to update or to open up these appointments. So please do use them. They are there, and as Sarah Jane said, the process of actually getting the TIE is relatively straightforward compared to other bureaucratic processes here in Spain. So don't be put off, and do make sure that you use those appointments. And it links actually to one of the other questions which I picked up, was about the TIE and the green certificate, whether the advice is that you should do it. Now, as we said, I think Sarah Jane mentioned again, it is not obligatory. So you will not lose rights if you do not change your green certificate. However, the Spanish government have been very clear, and we today are also being very clear, I hope, that moving across from a green certificate to the TIE will make your life easier here in Spain. There are several different advantages to it. Sarah Jane said it explicitly states that you are a beneficiary of the withdrawal agreement. The green certificate doesn't do that, okay? So this document, it is a document as well which will be recognised, if the format is recognised across the EU. So say you come through France on your way to Spain, and you wish to show your residence document, showing that TIE will be in a format which is much more easily recognisable for the French border guards as well, because their document for their UK nationals looks very similar. So it is a standard format, it is durable, it's not going to get crumpled in your bag or your wallet, it's not going to get lost as easily, hopefully, or destroyed, so you need to go and get another one. So please do think about the advantages of the TIE. And as we said, there are appointments available in the Alicante region if you are in the position now to move across from your green certificate to that more durable card. I'm going to have another quick look at the questions, see if there's anything.
Okay, I picked up one question about the number of outreach events we've done, and how we have been sort of packaging the information for British nationals. I think that's a broad summary of the question, but essentially, again, I think it is still up there on gov.uk, the amount of outreach we have done. So since the referendum result, we have been on the road tirelessly across the whole of Spain, concentrating mainly on the areas where there's a more densely populated resident community of British nationals. But we have been up to Galicia, the north of Spain, all the islands, etc. And we have tried really hard to get across what the call for action was when we were going to leave the EU, which was essentially to legalise your situation in Spain. And what we have been doing as well on our travels, but also through the questions and answers and the sessions we've done through social media, our Facebook account, any sort of events that we've done, and any inquiries we've had, we've tried to articulate through our gov.uk website what the main questions are. Now, what we have also found on our travels is that people have got some very complex setups. Some people have been here for a very, very long time, have never got down to registering their residency here, or have been working and partly working and declaring and partly not declaring, or spending time here and spending time in the UK. There are some awfully complex setups, so what we have been saying as well is that and that's why we have the UK National Support Fund, which is really to help those people who don't have a straightforward residency application or situation. But also, if you are finding that particularly for tax reasons, it's very, very complicated, then we do suggest that you do get expert advice, because we're not tax advisors. And whilst there is some information about tax on our website, we do urge you to find out through a professional what your specific situation means. Particularly what we're also finding is we have blended families, we have people people who've got children that, you know, some children born here, some born in the UK, not registered here, etc. So, like I say, we've tried to capture the main sort of themes around where we think the main questions are. But if your situation is not straightforward, then please do contact Babelia in the first instance if it's around residency, exercising your residency rights. And like I say, if it's to do with tax, etc., then you will have to seek more expert advice, I'm afraid. Lorna, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Yeah, I've just scribbled down a couple more questions which have come in. So there was a question, just picking up on what we were talking about before about the TIE. Somebody was asking whether you can apply for the TIE at any national police station. Now, it's not the case that you can apply at every national police station in your province, but there are certain ones in the province of Alicante. Those of you who perhaps have been trying for a while might have seen that originally, to exchange for the TIE, you needed to go to an office in Alicante city itself. But recently, more appointments have been opened up in other national police stations in the province. Now, it's not all of them, but it is certainly more than previously. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head which ones they are, I'm afraid. But when you go into the booking system, it will give you the choice of those different national police stations. So you do need to get an appointment online. You can't just turn up at any national police station in order to do the swap. You need to get the appointment first at one of the specified police stations, and then you can go through the rest of the process as set out in all the guidance documents. I should also say that the Spanish government have put together a really helpful frequently asked questions document, which is in both Spanish and English, which again goes through the different scenarios of how to get the TIE, depending on whether you do or don't have a green certificate. And it also covers guidance for family members, because I noticed that there was also a question around family rights and family reunification, and that's not something that we've perhaps touched on yet. But as a member, as a UK national who is covered by the withdrawal agreement, part of the rights that are covered are the right to family reunification for close family members. So, for example, if you are living here in Spain and you are registered and you are under the withdrawal agreement, but your spouse lives in the UK or elsewhere, your spouse is able to join you here in Spain as your close family member, and they will also have rights under the withdrawal agreement. Now, close family members refers to a spouse or durable partner, or dependent children or grandchildren, or dependent parents or grandparents. So it's not all cousins and brothers and sisters, but it does provide family reunification for close family members. And again, there is information on the Spanish government's FAQ document, which is linked to from the Living In Guide that we have on gov.uk, about how family members can get registered here in Spain. So hopefully that helps with that question. There was also a question around registration on the Padrón. Now, I mentioned in the presentation that I would probably prefer to leave this to the Diputación or to your town hall, who are best advised to talk you through this process. But it is true that different rules often apply in terms of the renewal of your Padrón registration, depending on whether you are an EU or non-EU citizen. Okay, so up until now, UK nationals have been EU citizens, and therefore the renewal of the Padrón, which is down to each town hall, must say, in general, may have been every, say, 5 years. For non-EU citizens, that renewal of the Padrón registration, so your registration with your town hall, can be more frequent, can be every 2 years. Now, you should be advised when it is necessary for you to update your Padrón registration. But do take this chance now to think, have I moved address? Have I updated my Padrón registration? And have I updated my residence certificate? Because it is important that you keep your address updated on your official documentation, so that you don't then have a letter sent to an old address and you miss it, and therefore you get taken off the Padrón. So do make sure that you've got your details up to date. And then just very briefly, there was one question around driving licenses, which is an issue which has come up in the Alicante region, but not only the Alicante region, where some of you have tried to exchange your license you followed the process that the Spanish Traffic Authority put in place last year. And just to remind those of you who might be a bit confused by this, basically at the end of last year, the Traffic Authority, the DGT, they put in place a process where you could register your details before the end of the year with them through a variety of different ways, either by telephone or in person or online. And if you registered your details, then you had the first 6 months of this year to complete the exchange by going in to the office to give in your UK license and to do all the paperwork to get your Spanish one. Now, some of you have been contacting us to say you did everything before the end of last year, but when you've gone to your appointment, you've been told that because your registration certificate was issued in 2021, your application has been rejected. Okay. Now, we are in touch with the Spanish Traffic Authority on this. They're aware that it has become an issue for many of you. As I say, not just in the Alicante province, but I know it has come up there. And we are in touch with them to clarify the exact guidance that we should be giving to UK nationals in this situation. Okay, so please do keep up to date, sign up for the email alerts on the Living in Spain guide, and follow us on social media. We have a Facebook channel called Brits in Spain. Do follow us on those channels, because as soon as we have that clarification about what steps you should take, then we will be publishing it there. Because as you say, as I said, having that residence document issued in 2021 proves that you were in fact here before the end of the year. So there is a bit of, you may need to resubmit for another appointment in order to complete the exchange, but we will put all the guidance as soon as we have it clarified. I think that has covered most questions.
Okay, thank you, Lorna. Now there's only 5 minutes left, and I see Esther is on the camera. I don't know if Esther is going to come in and say something on behalf of the Diputación, or I just put you on the spot, Esther.
Hola, buenos días. Hola, gracias, Sara.
Good morning, Sara. Thank you, Lorna and Sara, for being here with us this morning. I was surprised about the amount of comments, questions, situations that are suggested not only on the chat, but also through the question and answer sections on the webinar. It is clear that many of the British residents are worried, are concerned about their situation, because they want clarification on their situation, and they want their situation to be adapted to the current circumstances, not to have any problems. I think you have answered nearly all the questions as far as I have seen. You have managed to include all the information in your speech. So I think most of the questions, all of the questions are answered. The questions, the most frequent questions or doubts that may be not as clear have to do with the vaccination. You need to go to your medical center, and at the town hall, they also have questions about the need to have a padrón certificate in order to apply for the registration for the vaccination at the medical center. That may be one of the confusions, or one of the things that people may not be clear about. And it is true that there may not be lots of people in this situation, but some people ask if they have made the change of the driving license, and then at a specific moment they decide to return to the UK. What happens? Not here, but there. Can they take over the British license when they go back to the UK? So these two questions you may want to clarify a little bit more, so that we can give more precise information on these two. Lorna or Sara, whoever. I don't know if the questions are clear.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to, on the driving license one, and perhaps Sarah Jane, I'll leave the vaccine question. On driving licenses, if somebody exchanges for a Spanish license and they wish to visit the UK, they can visit the UK and use the Spanish license whilst they're on a visit. If that person decides that they wish to move back to the UK, again, they can use their Spanish license in the UK, and they can also exchange that Spanish license back to a UK license without the need to take a test if they originally took their test in the UK or a number of designated countries. Okay, I'm not going to list them all now. But if the person had a UK license in the UK, came to Spain, exchanged it for a Spanish one, and then moves back to the UK and wishes to go back to the UK license, then they can absolutely do so without the need to take a practical driving test. So I hope that answers the driving license question there.
On vaccines, going back to our gov.uk website again, on the travel advice section, there's a section on coronavirus, and within that, there's also how to get in contact with the local authority. There's telephone numbers and a web link as well. So if that I think that was the question, was about the sort of more about the how, but essentially go to our travel advice. Coronavirus, and under coronavirus, there's a bit about how you basically get your contact your local authority about the getting back into the vaccine program in your regional area. I know the questions are still coming in, and we are short of time, and I know that Laura and I do need to go on to another meeting. So, but I think this shows that there is a lot of appetite for this kind of webinar. So we're more than happy to do as many are required. I mean, we can do as many as are required until the questions stop coming in. I think if people do try and read the gov.uk, everything that's up there first, if that was required reading, what it would do for us would help us understand where the gaps are between what information we already have out there and where people are still struggling. Because what I don't want to do is sort of really kind of keep saying, go here, go here, go here, all the information you need is there. And then people go there and find that it's not all there. So I think that certainly my suggestion would be to do more of these, as many as are required, but also to get an understanding of where those gaps are. Between the information that we are providing and the challenges that are still out there, because not just can we address that through our website, but also through the support organisations that we work with, and again the outreach and influencing work that we do with the Diputación, the immigration offices, the police, and the airports, etc. So we do a lot of work in contacting with the Spanish stakeholders as well as the British community to help British nationals exercise their rights within the withdrawal agreement, and also understand what their position is post Brexit. And so I think we need to carry on with using this format to really kind of reach out and understand where the challenges still remain. I don't know if Esther or Lorna have any thoughts on that as well.
Pues muchas gracias, Sara, por
Thank you, Sara. Honestly, I think there are many means and resources available now for the British nationals to be well informed about all the steps that they should take. Nevertheless, we are at your disposal, or at disposal of all these people, to try and help them with this path. And we will tell the consulate all the concerns that may not have been covered fully, or that are not as clear as they should be for some citizens, so that you can update information so that everyone is clear about everything that they have to do, depending on their situation, where they have to go, and the steps that they should take. And I think this is essential. In our website for international residents, ciudadanosextranjeros.es, we've got all the information gathered from this program that has started today with this webinar on Brexit. All the information is gathered there, both in English and in Spanish, in a specific link. And you also have our contact there, because on a regular basis, we can provide with specific information on Padrón. And that's very important. Some people are coming up with this as well, how to get registered at the town hall, how to renew, how to confirm. All these questions are already covered in our website, and through the social media, we also launch messages on a regular basis. It's like information pills for those people to have all these things clear, so that they don't have any questions about the Padrón, the town hall registration. So through the contact on the website, they can get in contact to us, no matter what language they speak, and we will try and give an answer to them, either directly to the questions that they may have, or through you, through the consulate or embassy, or through whoever it may correspond, because we may not be able to help with some specific questions. So they all have these communication channels available. They will be open, and collaboration between the consulate and us is always open, as it has always been. This is the first webinar. We are going to have more, at least 2 more. I'm sure that we are going to be dealing with all the legal aspects of this new situation. In these next weeks, we need to be alert to the 2 new webinars that have already been scheduled, and to all the information that we are updating on the specific link that you can get through the website, our website. So that's all, I think. We need to finish. We have been a little bit delayed. Sara, Lorna, if you want to say something else, otherwise we can finish.
Thank you very much for hosting this, and obviously it's been the first time, so we haven't quite refined it as much as we could have done, but we'll build on this, and definitely at least another 2 of these, and if not more, and let's hope we can continue to address the needs of the British community in the Alicante province and across Spain in general. And thank you for joining us, everybody. And like I say, we'll be back again soon, as they say.